My question
is,
what do you think?
And I just had a quick question for you.
Alrighty, folks. So, a few weeks ago, we put out a tweet and we asked people for all of your video questions so that we could do a bit of an AMA. So I'll get to all of my answers in just 1 second to all of your questions. This video is sponsored by ExpressVPN.
My question for you is, why is your criticism, critique, analysis, your political analysis, which your show purports to be, so lacking in any criticism of the right?
So I don't think that that's true. I'm perfectly willing to criticize the right when the right is actually in power. Right now, the right is not in power. So if you actually look back at when President Trump was in power, there was a fair bit of criticism of the right's activity, what the right was doing. When the right is wrong, I try to note it. And when Joe Biden actually does something right, I try to note it as well. So for example, on Ukraine, I was very critical in the beginning, and I've been far less critical of Joe Biden's policy right now. I, in fact, praise Nancy Pelosi, for example, for going over to Ukraine. Again, when the left is in power, and the left, I think, is threatening the American promise more than the right is, I'm going to critique the left more than the right.
Why do you think modesty matters? There are other cultures in which women are wearing less than they are wearing in America, and those women are not sexualized. Don't you think that modesty is a social construct and that men should just be taught not to sexualize and objectify women, as opposed to women needing to alter their appearance just to appease men's primordial and animalistic desires?
So I think that the biological drive for men to procreate with women is not mutable. The basic belief that if you just teach men not to think that boobs are a thing, that men will then think that boobs are not a thing, I think that that is likely untrue. Now, are there cultural differences on this sort of stuff? Absolutely. The basic notion of modesty is a good one, because what that really is saying is that you're supposed to see women for more than just their body parts. There's an innate human and mammalian drive to procreate, and nakedness is the precondition generally to procreation. The idea that it is good for women to be more modest with regard to men, so that men are more likely to see them as fellow human beings as opposed to sexual targets. That is a protective mechanism for women that is good. You could also teach men that they ought to behave themselves, and you should teach men that. And that nothing a woman does or wears justifies a man treating that woman badly or as a sex object. If you dress immodestly, men are more likely to look at you as a sexual object, which is specifically why we have entire industries dedicated to people doing immodest things, that people will look at them for money.
Is there more to dealing with our debt than just raising taxes and cutting spending? Are we going to need to do more?
Well, we're going to need to restructure all of our entitlement programs. The fact is that our entitlement programs are the great drivers of the national debt, but both parties have been complicit in spending way too much money. I don't think that we are going to get ourselves under control. I think austerity measures are likely to be the most plausible outcome, because that's what's happened in Europe. People are willing to spend and spend and spend until somebody cancels the credit card. Or the other possibility is radically inflating the currency, which of course destroys our savings and the future of the American economy.
So the topic's been circulating around my school quite a bit now because of this Roe versus Wade case potentially being overturned. And I had a heated argument with my friend about it actually quite recently. He was mainly using the argument that it's her body, her choice. As long as the baby hasn't been born, she can do whatever she wants. Because I'm a man, I can't have an opinion about it. Thanks.
If you simply ignore the personhood of the human life inside you, then of course it's about bodily autonomy. It's no different, and no one on the right would argue differently. No one's arguing about removing a polyp. Nobody's arguing about appendicitis. Nobody's arguing about any of that stuff. And what we are arguing about is the independent human life that exists inside of you that is created at conception, that has an independent interest. But the generalized woman's body, woman's choice argument is extraordinarily stupid, because of course there is another human life that is involved. Also, the baseline notion that men have no comment on this is unbelievably silly, because again, that's like saying, if I didn't own slaves, then I have nothing to say about slavery. Or I'm not committing murder, so what do I have to say about murder laws? Like, we all have a stake in the common laws that govern our society and the view of our society about the valuable nature of human life. We'll get to more of your questions in this Ask Me Anything in just 1 second. But first, let's talk about that online security. Big tech is supremely powerful, more powerful than most countries are. They profit by exploiting your personal data. Well, this is why I put a layer of protection between my online activity and these big tech juggernauts. I use ExpressVPN. When you run ExpressVPN on your device, the software hides your IP address, which is something big tech uses to personally identify you. So ExpressVPN makes your activity harder to trace and sell to advertisers. ExpressVPN also encrypts 100% of your internet data to keep you safe from hackers and eavesdroppers on your network. What I like most about ExpressVPN is how easy it is to use. So all you do, you pick up your phone, you open ExpressVPN right now, it says, not connected. But I hit this button, and now it is connected. Behold, no one can now view my internet activity. And ExpressVPN does all of this without slowing your connection, which is why it's rated the #1 VPN service by TechRadar, The Verge, and countless others. So protect yourself with the VPN I trust to keep me safe online. Visit expressvpn.com/BenYT. Get 3 extra months for free. Again, that's expressvpn.com/BenYT.
How do you navigate working for a company that seems to not align with your values? I asked this because a couple of months ago, I accepted an internship at Walt Disney World in Orlando. I still really want to do it and don't want to give it up, but I'm also very hesitant to working in that type of work environment.
So first of all, I think that you can see that as an opportunity. Disney is one of the great American companies. The fact that it has fallen to the radical left is both insane and really disheartening. However, if you're already in the company and you're applying to the company because not only do you want to work for a great American company with good benefits or whatever, but you also want to try and effectuate change, I think you could see it as an opportunity rather than as a drawback.
My question is, should the law of the land more closely resemble the law given in the Bible, the first 5 books of the Bible, the Torah, or should the law be more neutral and less religiously based?
So my answer on this one is localism. So for example, you wouldn't want to use biblical law to govern San Francisco. It would just be a giant fail. No one would obey the law. It would undermine biblical veracity and all the rest of it. So as you abstract up the chain of government, this is what the founders understood. The number of people who are now governed by that entity are larger. They have more disparate values. That means that you can't legislate as much from this very top level because you just have broader disagreement. At the very local level, you can have very broad agreement, and that means much stricter law. I don't want the strictures of the Bible implemented top down by the government. I want biblical values to underlie a lot of the legislation that we push because I think those are the correct and moral values. But the idea of just going into Leviticus and then taking all that stuff and cutting and pasting it into American law on the basis, not of some sort of generalized rationale, but on the basis of God said it, I think that that is unlikely to be successful or to be useful.
My question is, what can you identify as the blind spots and shortcomings of conservatives and of people on the right?
I think that the biggest blind spot for people on the right is a neglect of the federalist principles that I've been talking about a lot on the show. The desire, I understand it, to sort of control top down the way that the country works. I think that that is the call of the ring of power in Tolkien. I think that the right now is very tempted to grab that ring of power and then use it in order to cudgel people into taking positions that they like. On a broad level, when you have a lot of disparate opinions and a lot of diverse opinions, grabbing that ring of power and using it for on your own behalf, eventually that ring of power will be taken away from you and used against you, which is why I think we have to minimize the power at the top level and we have to maximize the power at the local level for people to make decisions about their own communities. All right, folks, I hope you enjoyed those questions, but if you didn't, or if you have a better question, or if you just want to make fun of me, you can send an email right now to askbenanyquestion@gmail.com. That's askbenanyquestion@gmail.com, and you might be featured in our next AMA.